Hey, welcome everyone to Dworkin and Bernstein's Learn from Leaders virtual series. This virtual interview has been organized by the Business Management Department at Lakeland Community College. My name is Gretchen Skoke DeSanto. I'm a Business Management Associate Professor at Lakeland, and on behalf of both myself and my colleague and Department Chair, Connie Golden, who you should be seeing in the video pane here, we are so happy you're able to join us this afternoon. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our guest leader today, Veronica Isabel Dahlberg. She's the founding executive director of Ola Ohio, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Paynesville. And the mission of Ola is to improve quality of life opportunities and empower the Latino community. Veronica was born in Canton, Ohio. She's the daughter of Mexican and Hungarian immigrants, and she's been a long-time advocate in Northeast Ohio's Latino and immigrant community for, I believe, over 20 years. And I actually first met her when I worked in the city of Paynesville, and that's definitely over 20 years ago. So she has a phenomenal reputation. And she's really doing a lot of things recently because she is developing a Hispanic community center and commercial kitchen incubator in Paynesville. It's a $2 million project, which some of you may have read about recently in the News Herald. And it's due to open in spring of 2022. So all that 20 years of work is coming to this wonderful development in the city of Paynesville. She's also working on a research project to document the history of Mexicans in the Western Reserve with support from the Cleveland Foundation. She's received multiple honors, including but not limited to the 2019 Women of Note Award from Crain's Cleveland Business, the Torchlight Prize, a national award recognizing work that empowers the Latino community, and the Distinguished Hispanic Ohioan Award from the Ohio Commission on Latino Affairs. So thank you so much for joining us today, Veronica. This is such a pleasure. And I'd like to start off if you could first, let me see, introduce yourself and kind of give us an overview of your education, history of your career, and a glimpse into what brought you to found Ola Ohio.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, Gretchen. It's nice to see you again. And thank you, Connie, and thank you, Lakeland. It's really great to be here with all the students. I hope I can impart a little bit of wisdom from my, as you said, 20 plus. I say 20 plus because I don't want to say what it really is, but it's really a long time. Of my career, which has been so many twists and turns, but you know, I think, as you mentioned, you know, being a daughter of Hungarian Mexican immigrants, I think in many ways my parents shaped my career trajectory just because of their own immigration history and what they went through. My dad from Hungary having to flee and live in a refugee camp as a so-called displaced person, and then having to go to Venezuela and start a new life there, and eventually here in the U.S. With my mom from Mexico to Cleveland, actually, and where they both became U.S. citizens. So I was always surrounded by the immigration issue. I always had a compassion for immigrants. I was that child interpreter that would help my relatives and so on, and my own parents. But you know, one of the things that my parents did do was they always had a lot of different books around the house and things like that. So, you know, there were 5 of us, my brothers and I, and we just, I guess we were pretty wild, but somehow my parents were able to keep us in check, you know, as best as they could. But I noticed that my mom, even with the 5 of us under the age of 10, she went for her, at that time it was secretarial school certificate and ESL classes. So education was a big part in our household. But I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. I think when I was 18, I was working in a garage. I was changing oil on cars and doing lube jobs and racing cars. I had a fast car. That was a whole big world. I never knew that in the future I was going to be running a nonprofit to help Hispanics. So I guess I say that to just let people know that whatever position you're in, it can always change and probably will change. And mine changed very many times. So I also worked as a journalist. That was really what I studied. And I was a reporter for the Ashtabula Star-Beacon. I was on the board of Society of Professional Journalists, Cleveland chapter for a while. I was all into the journalism thing. But I also had always a foot in the immigration world, and at some point I just made a transition over to really wanting to help my community. And that's really what drew me to start Ola, was just the simple desire to help. I didn't know how I was going to do it back then, but I really wanted to.
Great, thank you very much. So I try to bring in speakers too. I teach mainly our entrepreneurship classes here at Lakeland. I try to bring a lot of speakers, and one question we love to ask about is the challenges that you've encountered and how you overcome them. And it's not like I want to dwell on the negative, but really that's where the growth is, right? We hardly learn anything when everything is a success. It's when things, are constantly being thrown at us and we're facing adversity where we grow as not only professionals, but as people. So could you tell us a few challenges that you've encountered in your career and how you've overcome them?
Yes, I think, maybe one of the biggest challenges I've had, and it's been ever present throughout my career, is just that I work with Hispanic and Latino immigrants, which is kind of a population that's been the object of a little like misunderstanding, of scorn, even hate, you could say. And so those challenges, those perceptions of the community I serve transfer over to Ola because we are an organization working with that population. So we've similarly had to encounter many of the same barriers, low expectations, and disparities that our community does, in a different way, obviously. But how I addressed them was just, I think, just being persistent, I guess, believing very much in what I wanted to do and trying to just overcome these challenges. I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because there were many barriers along the way. I mean, Ola, for many years, we didn't have, as they say, two nickels to rub together as an organization. We were really struggling, but we still did things. We still had accomplishments that we tried to get under our belt just so that we can continue to stay relevant as an organization. We were always helping people. It's just that we had overcome the challenge of not very many resources to help us do what we wanted to do. And I think with any startup, whether it's a nonprofit or a business, you're at this point at the beginning where you're starting to grow, but you don't have enough history that a funder is going to fund you. But how are you going to get to the next level if you don't get the funds? So it's almost like the chicken and egg type scenario, and you have to get through that in order to be able to take your project to the next level. And I don't know if I'll try to answer like some of the ways that I addressed it, but I do think that you have to be persistent, absolutely, and have a strong desire to keep going, because it could, it takes a toll on you. I like to say I'm battle scarred, because part of it too was that I didn't know what I was doing. So it's not just that there's the barriers and disparities, those are there, but also I had a lot to learn. And it's along the way, it's the people you surround yourself with that will help you get over those barriers.
Well, your point about persistence is a good lead in, I think, to the next question about leadership best practices. So I've studied leadership a lot, and without a doubt, leaders have grit, they have persistence, they have passion. You also mentioned that a few moments ago. What do you consider to be some other leadership best practices that have allowed you to sustain Ola all these years and to grow it and find those resources to ensure its success?
I think I'm really glad that people are talking about leadership best practices, because I also learned, but I think ethics is very important, integrity, those types of basic foundations that you want to have for your project, your organization, your business. Because as I mentioned, when you're going through those hard times, you don't want to compromise on your ethics in any way. And with Ola, I train my staff, I train our volunteers on this issue. We create some ethical standards that we abide by, and I'm always articulating what are my values as a person and what are the values that Ola has. And I share that with our staff and our volunteers in the community I serve all the time, just so that they know where we're coming from. And so I think it's very important to articulate those things. You know, also just taking care of your people. My staff, you know, when COVID first started, even before it really was known that it was going to be such a big deal back in early March of 2020, I had a meeting with the staff and I said, here's going to be our framework for OLA through this pandemic. First, my first priority and our first value is that our staff and their families are going to be safe and healthy. That is my first priority, that we're all safe. And then the second one is that OLA survives this pandemic. So we're going to make sure that we do the work we need to do to get OLA through this, secondly. And then third, help our community get through it. And I use the example of being on an airplane where they tell you when the oxygen mask falls, put it on yourself first so that then you can help the person next to you. And I was kind of thinking of OLA in that way. Let's get first the oxygen mask on ourselves, then on OLA, and then our community. Because if there's no OLA, we can't help our community. So when you create kind of a framework of what your priorities are and what your values are, that people understand. And then we just try to abide by those. So I think, you know, there's many other values that I like to articulate. There's times that you're going to have an ethical dilemma that comes up. Well, it won't really be an ethical dilemma, but it's where you'll be tested. And luckily, my staff had an example one time where somebody came in and said, can you write a letter of support and say that you've known me for the past 5 years? And she called me and she said, because we do a lot of letters of support to clients we serve. She said, this person wants me to say that I've known them and what should I do? I said, well, of course, we're not going to do that. You know, we're not going to lie on a letter of support. And of course, the client will get angry. They might go around and tell everybody, oh, it doesn't help. They never helped me. Do you see what I'm saying? So you come across these issues. But she learned when she communicated with me what our ethical standards are. And so that's an important thing to continue to communicate with your staff, is to just do the right thing. And everything else, let the chips fall where they may. But this person may be going around saying that we don't help, but we can't do anything about that. But in the long term, the fact that we maintain standards will be to our benefit.
Well said. So what I've noticed, certainly in my career, but just in working with a number of leaders here in Lake County, somebody can always point to, you know, a role model or a mentor who helped get them to where they are. Basically, you know, shoulders that they stood on. So do you have people like that in your life who have inspired your career and helped you build OLA to this success?
Yes, I do. It's a person that wouldn't be known to anybody, but her name is Janet Hernandez, and she actually grew up on the border, on the Mexican side of the border, a family of 12 children. Somehow through college and graduate school, she worked her way up, and I met her in Washington, D.C., where she was working for one of the largest Hispanic organizations. At that time, was called Unidos US, and I'm talking about maybe 15 years ago, maybe longer. And I was telling her about the struggles with OLA and so on, and she made sure that OLA was enrolled in this program called the Emerging Latino Communities Initiative. And Painesville was designated as an emerging Latino community because it wasn't similar to Cleveland or Lorain, where they have a presence of 100 years of Hispanics, but Painesville was a relatively new community and it was growing fast. So through that, OLA was able to get some grant funding. And not just that, but technical assistance, training, where we would go to these workshops and travel. And that really put us kind of in a solid ground. And she always supported me. And one of the lessons that she taught me was just being on the border, working with a lot of groups in Texas where there's extreme poverty among the U.S. citizen population of Hispanics in Texas on the border. Where she grew up, she said, you know, there's organizations there that are trying to help and do the right thing. And when they apply for grants, the grants aren't written properly, they're not done right, but they still give them support. Because sometimes if you get a 20-page grant application, you really have to have like skills to be able to do that. you need an audit. An audit for us costs $5,000 a year. So that excludes so many people, but it didn't exclude her. And she has made a difference on so many people by just giving you that hand up, believing in you, believing in your organization. She did that for me. And I tell her, Ola would not exist if it wasn't for you. And she really, for 5 years, we were in that program. So those 5 years, I pretty much survived on that small grant, which I think was $5,000 or something. But it was the training, the connections, and so on that I developed with her. So she was my mentor. And I have one other that I want to mention really quick. When I talk about integrity and ethics, as I was doing all my work with Ola, which Gretchen, sometimes, we're holding our press conferences and doing our rallies and so on. But I got a message through LinkedIn from an individual that wanted to meet and learn more about our work. And it turned out to be our now board president, John Martin. And John Martin, at the time that he reached out to me, I didn't know that he was the chief financial officer of Parker Hannifin, a Fortune 200 company. And, he was managing a budget, I don't know, in the billions of dollars. And I thought, oh my gosh, why? I didn't believe that somebody would be interested in Ola, but he was. And I got to know John, and he really taught me too a lot about the importance of ethics and integrity, because he would teach that to their 50,000 employees. And I would often consult with him as Ola was going through rocky times. What do I do in this situation? How do I handle this? And so he was a great support and mentor for me, and still is to this day.
Great. Now, so we do have a question in the chat box about the name of the first mentor you mentioned. What was her name again?
Janet Hernandez.
Janet Hernandez. Thank you very much. Great stories. So one thing we really try to impress upon our students here at Lakeland is the importance of communication. And if you're not a good communicator, then there's going to be significant challenges for you in the workplace, because that's really what, employers want to see, those strong communication skills. So what communication skills do you feel are the most important to develop? And do you have any suggestions on how to go about strengthening those?
Yes, this is a great subject. And I might be different than some people, because in some ways I'm old school, but one thing that the Mexican community taught me, because this is still very big in Mexico, are those pleasantries. That when you engage with somebody in a conversation, even in an email or a phone call, even a text, you say hello, good afternoon, the name of the person, how are you? It always has to have that in it. It can't just be like, hey, what's up? Even with my community, that is how we communicate. And the pleasantries are very important, because it shows respect for the other person. And also what it does, it slows you down a little bit, because instead of just barreling through and not acknowledging people on your way to your way to the top or whatever, it forces you to stop and consider the people that you're engaging with, and just take that pause. And I think that is so important. So we do that practice. I do it with my emails. I try to, as much as I can, in my emails, is address people properly, not just say, hey, what's up? And even once when I called my own office, we had a volunteer answering the phone, and she answered it. She said, hey, what's up? And I thought, okay, that would be okay if it was my brother or something, but I didn't want, that's old school. Not everybody's going to do it this way, but for me, what it does, it forces us to pause for a minute and pay attention to the other person. The other thing that is important, yes, writing skills are very important, because you have to be able to write a narrative, you have to be able to write a letter, you have to compose a letter, you have to be persuasive sometimes, so you have to learn those skills of persuasion. And so some of the ways that you can develop those skills is just put them into play, thinking about the people that you're interacting with. How can you acknowledge them in a way that is respectful of their time, of them? And then I think things will go better for you. And just communicate in writing. People worry so much about social media. I don't worry so much. We do use it as a great tool. I'm constantly reading Twitter and all that, but sometimes you could believe that it's not the be all end all. If you put something on Facebook that you're having an event, and then 5 people show up, I say, I don't understand. It showed that 300 people were going to be attending. because you're not communicating maybe with the people. And I do have very close communication with the community that I serve, just so I can keep my finger on the pulse. To develop those skills, I think just there's all kinds of stuff online, templates for writing letters. You want to personalize it. You want to be warm. And, you know, I think those are very important. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
It certainly does. I mean, I'm thinking, you know, bottom line, it's about building a relationship. And that starts from that first phone call, that first email. And that's really the foundation in business, is us connecting with others and building those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge people's time, because even if you're not, you know, people reach out to us all the time with things. And even if you maybe can't do what they want, you can't be harsh. Like, I always like to say, well, let me really think about this and find a way. We're always trying to find a way, because you don't want to like shut people down and things like that in a rudely. But that's how we like to handle things.
Wonderful. So now this is really a situation that it's always been there. My next question, but particularly since March of 2020, is this concept of balance. You know, how we find balance in our lives. And I think particularly, at least I know from my perspective, it's like, you know, where does my home life begin, you know, and my work end, or, you know, my work begin and my, you know, personal stuff. And it's all, you know, coming together. And, you know, we need to maintain or basically obtain this balance between, you know, work and life. So do you have any tips for folks on how to do that? Because we see for our students, you know, they can become really overwhelmed with school, and they're not taking enough time outside of that, you know, to just do things they love. And it's best to really get this under control so that you have a healthy life, which is certainly obviously going to help your mental health. So what thoughts do you have for us on that, Veronica?
Absolutely. I think people have to find a way to just separate from everything, because, and I'm probably not the best person to talk about this, maybe like you, Gretchen, too. I get so immersed in my work 7 days a week. You know, even just today we've had, you know, a woman's daughter has a brain tumor, another individual with kidney issues is court today. And there's so many cases, you know. In addition to working on our building, you know, I'm choosing some of the dispensers for soap and, you know, prepping for this call. So every day is just intense. So how do we do it? Well, first, just acknowledging that it must be done. It must be a part of your list of things to do. And for me, you know, and everybody will be different, but I like to keep my weekends open. I'm very insistent upon that lately, that I have to have my weekends to just decompress, clean my house, read a book, do all those kinds of things that I like to do, and just have something on the side. You know, try to have an interest on the side that isn't even related to your work. And one of the things that you mentioned about this research project I'm working on, I love to read and write because it's kind of from my previous life. And so I took on this project so that I would have something to kind of distract myself that I love to do. And it's separate from my work. It's not really related, but complementary, I guess you could say. One of our board members, who was also kind of a co-founder of OLA with me, Gladys Figueroa, she works at the prosecutor's office as the victim advocate, and we've been friends for over 20 years. And she always tells me and talks to me about boundaries, that we have to have boundaries. And so you will have to just make decisions every single day. Can this wait? And is this urgent? And if it can wait, don't feel guilty about putting it aside. Even if it's kind of hanging over your head that you have to get it done, you have to find a way to just put it aside and remind yourself, I have one life. You know, I don't want to see it all be gone because I'm pressuring myself with all these things. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think just first, you know, acknowledging that you should take time always, because you won't be good to anybody if you're stressed out and full of anxiety, and it could ruin your health too.
Excellent point. So we are almost at 1 o'clock. So I want to ask one more question, and then I want to turn it over to our students and college members who are here with us this afternoon. So get ready, guys. If you have questions, start typing them in our Q&A box, okay? But my last question to you, and this is near and dear to my heart, because it's been a huge part of my career for the last 25 years, is networking. It's incredibly important to build your network because you never do know where that will take you. I mean, it's taken me here to teach. I never would have thought I'd been doing this and loving it, but it was through my network that this all kind of came about. So what suggestions can you offer to students for building their networks?
You know, I would say diversify, because our tendencies are to go towards those maybe organizations or groups that are similar to us. But I think, and this will also help you with communication skills, if you kind of branch out and, you know, there's so many, as you know, Gretchen, all organizations, you know, from the Rotary clubs to, you know, chambers of commerce to all kinds of things out there. And I try to connect. I mean, honestly, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I'll keep this brief, but maybe 10, 12 years ago, somehow I was invited to speak at a prison for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let me try that. So here I was in front of a group of individuals who were incarcerated, and I had to be on point and talk about Hispanic Heritage Month and OLA and our work and so on. And then somehow it just took off, and I was invited back year after year, and they even did a fundraiser for OLA. But at the same time that I was doing that, I was also speaking to law enforcement groups. So just to give you an idea, when I mean diversify, the people in the prison ended up raising money for OLA, the law enforcement groups, you know, obviously building relationships there, so many different organizations that we interact with. And so I would say make a conscientious effort to reach out to diverse groups. One group that I recently was invited to be a part of was this Citizens Academy for the FBI, and people thought, wow, are you going to do that? And I was nominated, and actually I was accepted, which I couldn't believe, but it turned out to be an amazing learning experience for me, because one of the things that I learned, well, first of all, everybody in that group comes from a company, is a judge, or is somebody in the community. So it was perfect for networking, but also just what you learn. And I learned the concept of predictive thinking. And that is a concept that the FBI uses a lot, and now that I like to employ. So predictive thinking, think to the future, try to think of different scenarios and who you might need to meet with, what you might need to do for your organization. But I think it's a skill that you have to develop. So yes, join organizations, join clubs. I just joined the Society for Professional Baseball Research, and it's because I'm working on an article that's related to my Mexican research, which everybody will find out about soon. But, you know, it's been really fun. So I think just try to find something that isn't what's expected of you, and it will enrich your life so much and your work.
Well said. Thank you. So now we're going to turn everything over to Connie, and she's going to start checking out our questions that we have in the Q&A.
Okay, well, thank you, Veronica. And I just want to say that questions are rolling in, so keep them coming. We'll get to them all. But I also want to say just a quick before we get there. You mentioned about finding a way, and I just really want to sincerely thank you for finding a way when we requested that you join us today, that you made time in your schedule. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I couldn't turn you down. I appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. So we have a question about the commercial kitchen. Can you give us a little information about the commercial kitchen and who the target audience is for the kitchen?
Well, yeah, the kitchen is a part of our community center because food is such an important part of our community. But one of the other issues that we've been seeing is, you know, these health conditions that are very prevalent in the Hispanic community, and that is diabetes, high blood pressure. And so our idea was to do nutrition classes in addition to celebrating Hispanic food and culture through different events that we're going to be having. And then down the road, you know, when we get the right training and experience and knowledge, we can talk about maybe helping Latino, I guess you call them cottage businesses. These are the individuals that prepare foods in their homes, you know, for bake sales or for their own friends and family for parties. You know, they make the cakes and they sell tortillas, tamales, or what have you. But with a licensed commercial kitchen, partnering with the health department and others, that we can help them take their business to the next level. And so that it's like a bona fide business, and maybe they could sell at the farmer's market, for example, or party in the park, and thereby generating wealth for their families.
Great. Do you have events to inform the non-Hispanic community about OLA?
Well, yes, of course. When we have the community center open, we're going to have events all the time that I hope, and I would love to invite everybody to we will be updating our website that's going to reflect our calendar of things that we have going on, and we'd love for people to participate and be involved.
Great. Do you feel like networking with other nonprofits is beneficial?
Yes, of course. You know, I do think it is. You will get a lot of requests to network and to do so many different things. You'll be pulled in so many directions, but you really need to focus on, it's not really just about us and what's good for us, because we also want it to be mutual. We want to help others too, and maybe other nonprofits, but you do have to be very judicious about what that partnering looks like. But we partner all the time. I mean, we're partnering right now with the Auburn Career Center. We've partnered with the health department throughout this COVID. We partner with the social workers at the hospitals, and we just partnered with the fire department a few weeks ago to install smoke alarms in 25 households, Hispanic households. So we're always doing partnerships. They're a very important part of what we do. So yes, I mean, if there's something that we can do that is mutually beneficial, we would do it.
Okay, great. Now, we have a question that I believe it's getting to fundraising. Like, how do you get people to contribute to OLA? How do you, you know, advertisement of choice, maybe social media? How do you get support, financial support?
Well, it's interesting. At the very, very beginning, when we didn't really have support, funding support, we did what's called grassroots fundraising, where we would do events with our own community. But that never raised more than $2,000-3,000 at a time. Later, as we started, like I said, applying for grants, they were small grants, and you have to learn how to write a grant, and you have to research grants, and you have to know how to communicate what you're all about. So it's not even that you can hire somebody to do it for you, because we tried that, but they had a hard time articulating what it was that OLA does and so on. So we learned we got to do it ourselves for now. And then, you know, we did share things on social media, accomplishments, things that were going on. And then that's how people found out about us. One post we shared in 2018 when there was a raid out in Northwest Ohio that impacted over 200 Hispanic families. Our post that we shared about that reached over 1 million people. And, you know, we got quite a few donations from that. And so we created a donors list, and then we would email them. All of that is an enormous amount of work. To maintain donor lists and send them emails, send them receipts. And part of it too, and this goes hand in hand with best practices, is making sure that your finances are always transparent and handled correctly. So some of the best decisions we made was doing those audits where you hire professional accountants to do an audit. It costs money. But we do those audits, and then we have a professional payroll service. We have professional accountants in our QuickBooks. So everything is open. And of course, our board president, you know, everybody can see what we do, and we're very careful to do everything correctly. That way you can get the bigger donations. So because we have all of that, as we were constructing our building, for example, we raised $750,000, and 3/4 of the dollars that we needed for it. And then we had to take out a loan for the rest, a commercial loan. And as you know, it's very hard to do for a nonprofit. But one of the things, one of the main lenders told us was that our finances were impeccable. And so we got a commercial loan with excellent rates. And so that's key, to spend the time to work on getting all those systems in place so that you can. Now, there's going to be people who will support you along the way, as we have. We have our donors who believe so much in what we do. They don't mind if we have our systems in place or not. They know what our work is and they see it. But for some of the bigger dollars, you will need that.
That's excellent. You talked a little bit about the social media, the post that got 1 million, views on that. What else do you do with social media, and what platforms do you do, and who maintains that? I think there's some interest in social media and getting the word out.
Yeah, I mean, social media is a great way to get the word out. We use Facebook and we use pretty much just Facebook, to be honest with you. We have a text system that we also use that goes straight to our community. But on Facebook, yeah, it's usually me or Kelsey that's posting stuff on there. And if we have an accomplishment or something that we did, we'll post some pictures, we'll put a narrative on there. And that's pretty much what we do. So yeah, we are a little behind the ball in that, to be honest, as an organization, but it should, it's something important that should be done.
Okay. So maybe you need some volunteers that might be out there that might be willing to be Instagram for you. Or
yeah, that's right. That would be great.
Can you tell us a little bit about the structure of the board? I think there's a question, well, I know there is a question about John Martin and who he works for, but, what does your board consist of?
Well, our board is a legal entity now that we are a 501c3. So we have policies and procedures and so on. But our board is very diverse. Our board are individuals who believe passionately in the work that we do. And it's one of the lessons that I learned was pick people to work with who you trust and who believe in your work. Don't choose them for other reasons other than, you trust them, they believe in you, and they bring something to the table. John is now retired, but he's still very active with our board. We have Gladys, who founded Ola with me over 20 years ago. We have Marty Cephas, who's very active with businesses, and Ashta Beulah, somebody I've known for many years. So we have a very diverse board. We have Tanya Horn, who is with Avery Dennison. She's the Diversity Inclusion Manager. And I've also known Tanya for a few years, and she's the one who, first of all, believes so much in what we do, and she's very much a community leader for many groups. But she opened the door for us and introduced me to the Avery Dennison Foundation, and they made a significant $200,000 donation to Ola in July. That was, instrumental in helping us get our building to the next level. So even before this legal entity of our current board, I had an advisory board when Ola was still kind of informal before 501c3. And it was small, and some individuals, and I'm about to tell a lesson that I learned then, some individuals started to invite their friends to be on the board, saying, you have to meet this person. They could really help. I didn't know who they were, but next thing I know, there are 5 other people that I don't know, but who clearly are good people. But what happened in that point was that they started to maybe try to convince me not to do the community center. And of course, I wasn't having it because I was very singularly minded that our community needs this. We need a space for our community. So, and I don't know who these individuals really, really are. And so I consulted with some of my mentors, and they said, well, fortunately, it's not a legal entity, so you don't really have to, you can dissolve it completely and create your legal entity board with your 501c3. And that was one of the hardest decisions that I made. I didn't think I had it in me, but that's what I did. And, you know, now we have a board, we all communicate and function very well with the same goal of uplifting our community, getting this community center off the ground, and making a difference. So I think it's important to find board members who share your same values, your same ethics, who you trust, and who believe in the mission. It's key. So you don't want to have a board full of conflict, because then it distracts you from doing the work that you have to do. And we are super, super busy at OLA all the time, with people's lives are at stake, so we can't have that.
So on that same, I think there's interest in the structure. So you've explained about the board. How many individuals are on your staff? And do you have volunteers, full-time employees, part-time?
Yeah, people can look on our website and they'll see our staff and our board on there. But we have 3 staff right now, and we have lots and lots of volunteers. And our volunteers are all trained by us. They sign a confidentiality agreement. We have a paper that we give them of our best practices for our comportment and so on. And now with the community center, we've been a little bit kind of like economical with our staff right now, because we knew we were going to have to hire with the community center. So we will be hiring 3 additional positions very soon for the community center, and then more afterwards, but that's what we're starting with. And our board structure is just, you know, we keep minutes. We meet every other month. We vote on things. I mean, I can't make decisions without the board approval, and everything is documented. And yeah, that's how we operate.
You mentioned a little bit about the pandemic and your analogy with the oxygen in the aircraft. But how has the pandemic impacted what you do as an organization? Like the services or the outreach, has that impacted what you do?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just like it's impacted everybody. We had so many plans in 2020. Was it 2020? I forget when it first hit. You know, we were taking a group to Washington, D.C. in March. We had a premiere of a documentary that we worked on with some students, and we had our annual fundraiser, which is a huge event, you know, with hundreds of people. All of these things were in the works, and all the time and hours that went into it, we just had to stop and just cancel all of it. And that was really hard, because that was a lot of wasted hours, a lot of wasted time. But not only did we have to stop all that, we had to continuously inform ourselves, okay, what is going on here? What is this about? And then we had to inform our community. So instead of having community meetings, we started to do conference calls, and we would get the community on the calls. We'd invite the different health commissioners to get on the call and explain, what is this pandemic? What is COVID? How do we protect ourselves? So it was important for us to get information out to the Spanish-speaking community. That was our top priority. And then we started getting big deliveries of masks and things like that we were to distribute to farm workers and others that we serve. And I'm talking 20,000 masks and cases of hand sanitizer and all of that. So we had to have an operation of getting this stuff out to people. And then people started to get COVID. So then we had to start doing kind of our wraparound services for individuals with COVID. We started monitoring them, doing the contact tracing. We delivered groceries to their house. We called them every single day, twice a day, to see how they're doing. We delivered thermometers. We had almost 150 cases that we were managing, and it took up all of our time, 7 days a week, all of our staff. So it was very, very grueling. Once that was kind of over with towards the end of last year, then we were pivoting to the vaccines. So now we were on all these different task forces and things like that, and working on the vaccine distribution and, you know, information and so on. And we've done 17 vaccine clinics this year, OLA has. And we also helped several hundred, over 1,000 Hispanic people get the vaccine through the vaccine center in Cleveland that was there. through some of the clinics that we've done, interpreting on job sites for other employers, the whole 9 yards. So we've been very, very involved in that. And yes, it's taken up a lot of our time, and trying to do the community center through all of that and everything else that we have to do. Again, I just give credit to my staff, which they are so dedicated and they're the best. And our volunteers are the absolute best. So if somebody had COVID, they couldn't leave their house for 2 days, we order the groceries for them, like on Walmart online, and then our volunteer would pick it up through a contactless delivery and then drop it off at the house. So we did that for hundreds of people, and it was a big operation that we had going on. We secured thermometers and we would drop those off, and medicines, lots of different things.
That's great. So can you tell us a little bit about the community center process? Like you had the idea and then applying for funding, and how long has it taken to get to this point?
Well, we always wanted the community center, but getting to this point, gosh, so many twists and turns, but really I would say the past 5 years, we've been very focused on it. We just bought the building in December of 2019, the end of December of 2019. And then of course the pandemic hit in early 2020. But one of the things we did, as I mentioned, as I laid out our priorities for OLA, that we're going to focus on our families and our staff health first. And then on OLA, I laid out our priority of making sure we spend this time also raising money so that OLA doesn't go under. And we did that very aggressively, I guess you could say. We worked really, really hard on that. And yes, we were able, I never dreamed we could, but we raised quite a lot of money. And so then, we had to hire architects. We had to hire a contractor. There was a process where, we had to vet different contractors and interview them and look over prices. I mean, there's just so much. We had to get permits from the city for zoning approved. We had to get architectural drawings. There's just so much to it. One of the good decisions we made was our architect. We pay him to manage the project. So a lot of the details now of getting permits and things for the plumbing, sanitary, electrical, everything that has to be done, demolition, they handle that. So yes, it's very detail oriented. You really need to have a good administrative staff, which I'm very fortunate to have with Kelsey, who is kind of my right-hand person, or we're side by side. She's really, really good with that kind of detail administrative work. And so sometimes the way we do our grants is that she'll do the budgets part and I do the narrative part, just kind of working on since I used to be a writer, I feel very comfortable and I know what OLA does, and so I'm able to write those narratives. But for the community center, it's very difficult with many challenges, many barriers that we had to overcome, but somehow we made it here. And I'm very happy that we had our groundbreaking on September 23rd, and there was a wonderful cross-section of the community present. And I wanted people to know this is a true community center. And when we have our grand opening, I hope everybody will come to that in spring of 2022.
That's great. Well, I think we are winding up the questions. Gretchen, do you have any that you see that I don't?
I don't believe so. Except did we answer where John Martin worked? It was Parker Hannafin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's retired now, and he is now with Lake Tran. And like I say, he's a wonderful mentor for me, and just a very caring person, and somebody who I credit with, helping us get through these difficult years of, decisions that need to be made and so on. But through everything, through our center and through all everything we go through, I always say to OLA, our staff, our volunteers, that our bread and butter in OLA is the community we serve. We will never stop doing that. And and I often say I'm a terrible executive director because I'm supposed to be focusing, and we have consultants and things. We won a special award that we got support for our building and a consultant. And he says, you need to really focus on the networking and fundraising. But I'm on the phone, helping, talking to doctors, and, I still like to communicate with the clients. That is the most important thing to me, and help them and let them know that we're here for them. So that's important, that you don't lose what you're all about.
We do have a couple more questions that prompted. What advice would you give someone who's afraid to network outside their niche?
Well, yes, everybody feels that fear, including me. I get very nervous, but you just kind of put yourself there. Don't have a whole lot of expectations, like you're going to start meeting and saying hi and shaking hands or whatever. But just maybe put yourself there and see what comes out of it. You could take baby steps, maybe saying, let me go to this meeting, let me join this group and see what happens. Or maybe I'll just talk to the people at my table. Or another way you could do it is, there's a lot of fundraising events for good causes. You can get a ticket to one of those and sit at the table and strike up a conversation with somebody next to you, and just start like that, because that's not too scary. And then you could be eating your dinner by yourself there and just, but it's worth trying. We all get scared. You don't know if somebody's gonna, and they might say, oh, you work with immigrants? Okay, I don't want to talk to you, type of thing. You might get that, but if you believe in yourself and what you do, you wouldn't take it personally. So, but most people are just very nice, and you should just try to put yourself out there.
Okay. And regarding marketing, what do you feel is the most successful marketing techniques that you have used?
I think people love to read about other people. And so if your business helped a person or has a story to tell, then that's what people like to see. They like to see other people. That's what we've learned. Like, those are our most popular posts. I might put a graphic like, we're doing a vaccine clinic on such and such date, and you get 20 likes. But then if I post, here's one, we just helped him get his paperwork, and he's holding a tray of Mexican food, and he's in the restaurant, where people go crazy. Like, they love those kinds of stories. So they love outcomes. So I think it's important to share the positive outcomes. And, I was just reminded real quick, if I have a minute, this funny story about communicating and the fear. I was the most scared person when I first started, and I was working for a college newspaper, and I got an assignment to go to a Grateful Dead concert. And so I went, and all of a sudden I'm told that I can go backstage. And so here I am backstage, and not really bad. I'm actually on the stage, and I have my reporter's notebook, the slim notebook and everything. And the concert's going, and I'm looking at everything. I'm scared out of my mind. I don't know what to say. And guess who comes over to me is Jerry Garcia. He's like, hi, I hear you're doing a story for the college paper. And I froze. I didn't know what to say. And I just looked down at my notebook, and I was so, I kind of had a moment of panic, and I didn't really interview him. I just kind of like, yes, and walked away. I blew my chance. So now I'm speaking publicly all over the place. So I'm just telling that story, that you too can have these fiascos and recover from them. I still think about it so many years later, because it still makes me think like, oh my gosh, what did I do? It's so embarrassing. But you can overcome those. So don't be too hard on yourself.
That is a great story, and a good story to end on. I think that we are almost out of time. So Gretchen, I'll throw it back to you.
Veronica, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, sharing your time and expertise with us. We're all going to be looking forward to hopefully joining you for the groundbreaking for your community center in the spring of 2022. So from the Lakeland side, please let us know any way we can help you out. Thank you all to the folks who joined us today on the line. Reminder, don't click out of everything too quickly so that you miss our survey, okay? It should pop up after you leave this meeting. It should pop up in your browser. Just leave us a couple of comments about what you thought about today and make sure you give us your name and you'll be entered into that giveaway for 4 Giant Eagle gift cards. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Veronica. We appreciate your time. And hopefully I'll be seeing all of you around campus.
Thanks
all.
all.
Okay, take care, everyone.